Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing abrupt climate change. Coming to you not so live from a basement without a shower. No, it's actually in my garage, which puts me a little bit of a distance away from my Wi-Fi source, which is causing me great distress this evening. But kind of just starting this video over because the beginning of my first attempt was real choppy, so there was no point in saving that. So yes, great disturbances in the force, great chaos beginning to take shape in the system. You know, I was thinking about the obsession people have with this like superhero, thing the other day. Every movie now is like a superhero movie, and not every movie, but one of two movies, which makes for a lot of movies that are fantasy-based superhero. We just seem to be really in love with this. These images and this whole like mythology or whatever it is that you want to call it. But if there ever was a time for humans to actually be their own superheroes, to actually fight a really great battle, this would be the time, because the really great battle that we need to be fighting is ourselves. It looks like we are bringing death and destruction upon ourselves and upon the entire earth. If not sooner, then pretty soon in geological in a geological timeline, and we could avoid this. We could avert this, but we need to get our heads out of the clouds and out of the stars and out of these comic books and focus on reality. That might be a good first step, because seriously, we need you. We need everyone to kind of wake up out of this stupor, out of this dream that we call civilization at the moment. I'm just going to bring you more news of the breakdown of our environment. I was going to start, let me start with this. There's a new post on Loki's Revenge called Charting Collapse from May 28th, 2018. Just goes through charts of what's going on. As far as accelerating, problems, and I don't know. I'm just gonna briefly go through these charts and just kind of talk about them. But I'm gonna link this below, and you guys can look at the charts. It's better viewed than than talked about, but. And if I had my video making game together, I could just like kind of show you these charts and go through them with you, but I'm not going to do that. Global energy use, change over the last 5 years, coal way down, oil and gas continue to go straight up. Fossil fuel share of global energy, 86. It seems to, losing 1% share per decade. Well, that's not enough. Number of loss events, I guess we could call that disasters, seems to be climbing. Carbon crunch, we have roughly 7 years or less to basically just take our carbon use straight down, and we're not going to do that. Great acceleration chart. You all probably saw this in that last one of that article I linked recently. Everything going up. Ages of energy, just kind of showing different consumptors of energy. Transport energy consumption by fuel type. In the last, well, it's projecting to 2040. Basically, we're going to keep on using more oil until at least 2030, and this is I'm taking this as the optimistic Paris Climate Agreement trajectory. So we're going to continue growing. Gas is going to grow. Electricity will grow very, very, very small amount. Other, whatever that is, will grow too. The outlook examines the energy transition. Excuse me. Again, oil and gas seeming to either plateau or stay the same or grow until 2040. 50% of European renewable energy equals burning wood. So this is a story that we briefly have talked about over the last few months. But this seems to be something that's going to become a serious problem, because Europe is using wood pellets for energy. And in one of the articles I just linked a few days ago, I think it was about southern trees being U.S. southern forests being cut down for these European coal wood pellets. It will take 55 years for trees to soak up enough carbon to make wood pellets to be equal that of coal. But emissions must hit 0% in 20 years to stay below 2C. So they're saying the amount of carbon that we need to equal coal. I'm trying to actually understand this. Take 55 years for trees to soak up enough carbon to make wood pellets to be equal to that of coal. Okie dokie. Anyways, it shows everything just continuing to rise as far as energy use into the next century. Industrial wood pellet demand. 66% of US energy is wasted. Another interesting chart here. Coal remains the world's largest source of energy-related CO2 emissions, but by 2040, its share declines to 38%. Okay. But overall, liquid fuels, natural gas, and coal continue to rise into 2040 and beyond. Ozone is considered the third most important GHG and is toxic to humans and plants. Come again? So we have methane, nitric oxide, halocarbons, carbon dioxide, and ozone as a greenhouse gas. Huh. Never heard that one. What is this? Temperature anomalies in the lower troposphere are going up, 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 and in the lower stratosphere going down. I'm taking, that's temperature. Ground level ozone concentration change per year, parts per billion. Going down or roughly staying the same in Europe and North America, rising in East Asia, South Asia. Man, I've spent a lot of time just boo-hooing with this chart. Earth, during Roman times, Earth's magnetic field was 2 times stronger than now. Okay, China and America have trouble reporting coal and methane emissions, honestly. Ground ozone is toxic to plant and humans and is a major greenhouse gas. Asia is the likely source of new tropospheric ozone destruction. Ground ozone causes global warming, which causes more earthquakes and volcanoes. Volcanoes emit sulfur, which destroys upper atmospheric ozone. Ozone destruction and a weaker magnetic field will combine to increase radiation exposure. Excuse me. We have to decrease emissions 100% in 10 to 20 years, not 1% per decade like now. Electric cars will only decrease emissions 0.5% over the next 30 years. Yeah, so much for electric cars. We will run out of soil and water before we reduce emissions 100%. We have to grow more food over the next 50 years than we did in the last 10,000. Okay. I apologize for spending so much time kind of on that last article. I'm going to move on to article by Dar Jamail from Truthout, May 30th. A disrupted climate means deadlier cyclones in the Middle East. On May 26th, Cyclone Mukunu, the most powerful storm ever to strike Salalah, Oman, made landfall, killing at least 13 people. Cyclones are uncommon in the Arabian Sea and off the eastern African coast, but that is changing, thanks to human-caused climate disruption. Their frequency and strength is increasing dramatically with each passing decade, as the atmosphere continues to warm due to human fossil fuel emissions. Cyclone Mukunu deluged Salalah, Oman's third largest city, with more than 2 years' worth of rainfall in 24 hours. Salalah normally gets 5 inches of rain per year. The storm, which packed gusts of up to 124 miles per hour, tore apart buildings, downed street lights, and turned normally bone-dry creek beds into raging rivers. Scenes of the devastation are apocalyptic. Unfortunately, science shows us that this region must prepare for more of this to come, as climate disruption continues to shift planetary weather patterns in increasingly dramatic ways. The science: over the last 2 decades, the intensity of storms across the Arabian Sea has increased notably. As the already very warm waters of that area are warmed further, this year they are 2 degrees Celsius above normal. The amount of evaporation increases, which lends larger downpours and increasing strength to the cyclones. I actually saw in one of the videos in an article I posted a couple days ago, there are some anomalies of 5 degrees Celsius in the Arabian Sea, which is gigantic. While no single weather event can ever solely be attributed to human-caused climate disruption, science shows that higher ocean heat provides more energy for storms. Given that oceans have absorbed nearly all the heat humans have generated in the atmosphere, the impact is obvious. And this has been made clear in just the last few years. In 2015, Hurricane Patricia in the North Atlantic set a record at the time for the strongest winds at sea at 215 miles per hour. The very next year, Winston became the strongest storm ever recorded in the Southern Hemisphere. Hurricanes and cyclones function as a sort of relief valve of energy as they remove heat from the tropic oceans in the form of moisture being drawn into the atmosphere, where it is radiated back into space. This keeps the oceans cooler, and no other phenomenon plays this role as hurricanes do. Experts with the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration believe human-caused climate disruption will cause stronger storms. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has long since shown that there has been an increase in hurricane activity across the North Atlantic since the 1970s. While other areas of the globe may not necessarily see more hurricanes and cyclones, the strength of storms everywhere is highly likely to increase. For example, storms with precipitation levels like Hurricane Harvey that deluged the Houston area in 2017 with record-breaking rainfall are expected to increase in strength and also in frequency. That type of storm has already evolved to be expected once every 16 years instead of once every century. IPCC research has also already shows that there has been an increase in hurricane activity over the last 4 decades. Hence, While overall around the globe the number of storms is not dramatically increasing, the strength of storms clearly is, given the fact that oceans have absorbed nearly all the increase in the planet's energy between 1971 and 2010. Higher winds, higher storm surges, and dramatically increased downpours with hurricanes and cyclones around the world are now becoming the new normal, and these trends will all increase with time as human-caused climate destruction continues unchecked. Indeed, one of the side effects, one of the consequences of climate change that will soon be upon us. In related news, there was a study that showed that there was a severe underreporting of deaths in Puerto Rico due to Hurricane Maria. This is from the BBC News. This is from May 29. Hurricane Maria killed 4,600 in Puerto Rico. Hurricane Maria killed more than 4,600 people in Puerto Rico, 70 times the official toll, according to estimates in a Harvard University study. A third of deaths after September's hurricane were due to interruptions in medical care caused by power cuts and broken road links, researchers say. This is why, a forced withdrawal from fossil fuels or collapse of the grid of any kind. This is how deadly it can get very quickly. The Puerto Rico government said it always expected the number to be higher than what was previously reported. The official death toll stands at 64, but experts say an accurate count was complicated by the widespread devastation wreaked by the storm. Carlos Mercader from Puerto Rico's Federal Affairs Administration said he welcomed the Harvard survey. The magnitude of this tragic disaster caused by Hurricane Maria resulted in many fatalities, he said. He added the island's authorities had also commissioned George Washington University to study the number of deaths, and these findings would be released soon. Both studies will help us better prepare for future natural disasters and prevent lives from being lost. The Harvard researchers said interviews conducted in Puerto Rico suggested a 60% increase in mortality in the 3 months after the storm. They contacted more than 3,000 randomly selected households between January and March this year and asked about displacement, infrastructure loss, and causes of death. Were deaths preventable? Many Puerto Ricans we spoke to felt their immense suffering after the hurricane had been trivialized, and that the emergency response has been lackluster. A relatively small number of people may have been killed by the physical impact of the storm, but 6 months later, we met people who had lost relatives as a result of interrupted medical care and saw others struggling to pay for expensive generators on which they were running vital life support equipment. Again, the thing that intense disruptions in the continuity of our grid or life, business as usual, affects people who are sick, elderly, people who rely on air conditioning and life support equipment, et cetera, et cetera. There were also reported to have been a spike in the number of suicides. We found many still without homes and thousands who had been living without electricity since the day Hurricane Maria struck. Whatever the true number of those killed as a result of the storm, it is now certain to be many times the official figure. The question for U.S. authorities about Puerto Rico and American territory is how many of those deaths could have been prevented with a better emergency response. They compared their results with the official mortality rates for the same period in 2016, more than a year before the hurricane struck the island. The researchers said that interrupted medical care was the primary cause of sustained high mortality rates in the months after the hurricane. On Twitter, several users noted that the death toll exceeds the nearly 3,000 Americans that were killed during the 9/11 attacks. Hurricane Maria, excuse me. Hurricane Maria caused the largest blackout in U.S. history, according to research consultancy the Rhodium Group. There have also been repeated power cuts since then, including an island-wide one in April, nearly 7 months after the hurricane. The Caribbean island is home to 3.4 million U.S. citizens. All right, moving on. Another report of water crisis in India. Tourists told to stay away from Indian city of Shimla due to water crisis. This is from May 31st, today. Residents use social media to beg holidaymakers to avoid area as supplies run dry. Residents of the picturesque Indian hill station, Shimla, are begging tourists to stay away amid a severe drinking water shortage that is being compared to Cape Town's water crisis. The Himalayan city was the former summer capital of the British Raj and continues to be popular with Indians fleeing scorching summers on the Gangetic Plain. Water supplies have been critically low for at least the past 3 years, but ran out completely on May 20th. The shortage has forced the city's 172,000 residents to line up for hours each day to collect water from tankers supplied by the government, to drink bottled water, or to pay steep prices to the tanker mafia, private suppliers accused of siphoning water from the public supply. At the height of its tourist season in June, when the population swells by another 100,000 people and visitors can reach up to 30,000 each day, the city needs about 45 million liters of water daily. On Tuesday and Wednesday, it had about 18 million and 22 million liters available, respectively, officials said. Hotels have been canceling bookings, and locals are using social media to ask tourists to stay away until supplies recover. A plea to everyone who loves mountains: it's about time all of you stop visiting Shimla for a while, one resident, Abhinav Chandel, wrote on Instagram. The residents are barely getting water to drink, and at few places sewage water is being supplied to the houses. Dozens of police officers have been deployed to guard water distribution sites, and protests have broken out across the city as the city nears almost 2 weeks without regular supplies. Construction activity has been banned, and on Tuesday, car washes were prevented from operating for a week. The Himachal Pradesh Chief Minister, Jairam Thakur, has blamed the crisis on lower than expected snowfall that caused rivers and streams to dry. Others have blamed chronic mismanagement. The town should receive about 70 million liters per day, but about 40% is lost to leakages during the pumping and distribution phases, according to estimates by Tikender Panwar, the city's former deputy mayor. One of the 5 major water sources for the, this thing kind of jumped. 5 major water sources for the Ashwani Khad rivulet is also believed to have become contaminated in recent years, further reducing the supply. Panwar also blamed climate change, which he said had resulted in more rain, but in shorter, heavier bursts. The rain comes in torrents, so the water doesn't get retained below the surface, he said. Cape Town in South Africa narrowly averted exhausting its water supply earlier this year due to intensive conservation efforts, but several Indian cities face a similar prospect with stocks at about 29% of total capacity, the lowest in a decade, according to the country's Central Water Commission. Around 600 million Indians are experiencing high water stress, according to the World Resources Institute. Major cities such as Delhi and Bangalore have faced disruptions to supplies in recent years. In 2016, tensions between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu state over how to share supplies from a major river erupted into riots. Many of those who do not have water find their supply as tainted. A World Bank study estimated that about 163 million Indians had no access to safe drinking water, and that 21% of the communicable diseases in the country were linked to polluted supplies. The most common is diarrhea, which kills about 500 Indian children under 5 every day. In part, the problem is the population. India has about 17% of the world's people, but just 4% of the freshwater resources. But analysts also blame poor management by state and federal governments, corruption, the endemic pollution of existing water sources, as well as reliance on inefficient crops and farming methods by the agriculture sector, which uses 90% of the country's water supply. Yeah, what other area has had lower than expected snowfall that might have some problems soon? Could it be the western United States had very low snowpack this year? One more article I'm going to read. I had so many things I wanted to read and so many things I did not get a chance to get to. Also, I will be updating and putting the links in the video from a couple days ago. When I had to re-upload the video, I didn't put the links in, and I'm sorry I haven't been able to do anything until tonight, but those links will be in there tonight. If you're interested in going back and checking out some of those articles, they will be there. Lastly, from Astrobiology Web, this is from May 24th, 2018. When dinosaurs died, so did forests and tree-dwelling birds. 66 million years ago, the world burned. An asteroid crashed to Earth with a force of 1 million times larger than the largest atomic bomb, causing the extinction of the dinosaurs. But dinosaurs weren't the only ones that got hit hard. In a new study, scientists learned that the planet's forests were decimated, leading to the extinction of tree-dwelling birds. Looking at the fossil record at plants and birds, there are multiple lines of evidence suggesting that the forest canopies collapsed, says Regan Dunn, a paleontologist at the Field Museum in Chicago and co-author on the study in Current Biology. Perching birds went extinct because there were no more perches. We drew on a variety of approaches to stitch this story together, said Daniel Field, the paper's lead author of the Milner Center for Evolution at the University of Bath. We concluded that the temporary elimination of forests in the aftermath of the asteroid impact explains why arboreal birds failed to survive across this extinction event. The ancestors of the modern arboreal birds did not move into the trees until forests had recovered from the extinction-causing asteroid. The project's pollen expert, Antoine Bercovici of the Smithsonian Institute and the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, helped to determine that the world's forests were destroyed by looking at microscopic fossils of pollen and spores. Dunn explains, after a disaster like a forest fire or volcanic eruption, the first plants to come back are the fastest colonizers, especially ferns. That's because ferns don't sprout from seeds, but from spores, which are much smaller, just a single cell. Spores are minuscule, the size of a grain of pollen, so they're easily dispersed when they get picked up by the wind and go further than seeds can. And all they need to grow is a wet spot. The spores are tiny. You could fit 4 across a single strand of your hair, says Dunn. To see them, we take a sample of rock from the time frame just after the collision and dissolve it in acid. Then we purify it so that all that remains is the organic debris, like pollen, spores, and little leaf bits. Then we look at them under a microscope. Immediately after the asteroid hit, the fossil record shows that charcoal remains of burnt trees and then tons of fern spores. An abundance of fern spores in the fossil record often comes on the heels of a natural disaster that destroyed larger plants like trees. Our study examined the fossil record from New Zealand, Japan, Europe, and North America, which shows that there was a mass deforestation across the globe at the end of the Cretaceous period, says co-author Bercovici. And with no more trees, the scientists found tree-dwelling birds went extinct. The birds that did survive were ground dwellers, birds whose fossilized remains show longer, sturdier legs like we see in modern ground birds like kiwis and emus. The Cretaceous equivalent of robins and sparrows with delicate little legs made for perching on tree branches had no place to live. Today, birds are the most diverse and globally widespread group of terrestrial vertebrate animals. There are nearly 11,000 living species, says Field. Only a handful of ancestral bird lineages succeeded in surviving the mass extinction event 66 million years ago, and all of today's amazing living bird diversity can be traced to these ancient survivors. And while fossil animals like dinosaurs and birds often get more love than fossil plants, Dunn says that plants are critical to understanding life on Earth. Plants are everything. Plants are the context in which all terrestrial life evolves and survives. They're primary producers. They make energy available to all life forms by capturing it from the sun. We can't do that. She also notes that while the dinosaurs and the perching bird neighbors died 66 million years ago, their plight is relevant today. The end Cretaceous event is the 5th mass extinction. We're in the 6th, said Dunn. It's important for us to understand what happens when you destroy an ecosystem, like with deforestation and climate change, so we can know how our actions will affect what comes after us. And that is all I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for your ears, your eyes, and your conscience. I hope to be back tomorrow with another video. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links given below. Until next time, peace.